Hey everybody, this is Kevin and welcome back to another Estes rocket build video. Today we're going to be building the green eggs. This is not my first time building one of these, but it's my first time building them on camera. So we're going to have fun documenting the build process of this and include a few of my personal customization modifications that I like to make, but in no way, shape, or form will it affect the aesthetics of the original design. What makes this rocket unusual is a BT65, which is not a common body size for Estes rockets, but it is they do have a few rockets. Right off the top of my head, I can think of the Olympus and the Green Eggs. I think there's one or two more out there that use that body too, but it's a little unique. But this rocket is designed with a clear / green transparent payload bay, in which you are able to carry a payload such as an egg and see if you can survive the flight and not crack the egg open. If you do that, I do recommend you put the bag or the egg in a little Ziploc bag or something, just in case. But it's a big, beefy, stout little rocket. It's going to be a lot of fun to build, and let's stop talking about it and let's do it. Let's open it up, do an inventory, and then get to work on the Estes Green Eggs. Okay, we'll go alphabetically through the list here. First off, we've got the engine mount tube at letter A. Here is our engine mount tube. Then we've got the engine hook, which should be right here. Okay, letter C is our green engine block. So obviously we're looking for a green ring. Then we've got the black engine hook retainer ring, which is right next to it. Then we've got our laser cut centering rings. Here they are, hiding at the bottom. Then we've got the main body tube. Again, BT65 with the fin slots. Then we've got our laser cut balsa sheet, which we've already looked at. Beautiful fins right there. Then we've got our nose cone, and that also consists of the adapter for the payload. Then we've got our clear payload adapter piece. And we've got our launch lug. It's hiding in here somewhere. There it is. It's a pretty stout 1/4 inch launch lug. Then we've got our shock cord, rubber elastic, and then we've got our parachute. And last but not least, we've got our decals. There you go. All right, so let's clear the board and get right to it. Okay, as usual, there are a few things that I personally like to do before I actually start the construction of the build. It's kind of like prep work, and these are things that help the build go a little bit quicker, more efficient, and smoother. One of the things is, take for example the nose cone. It comes in the yellow, which is appropriate for the rocket, but I like to paint my nose cones anyway. So we will be painting this yellow. So I want to get started on that sooner rather than later. So I need to separate the nose cone from the transition piece. They show to do it with a knife, which is appropriate. However, a little trick I like to use is take a straight edge razor blade, just sort of drop it into that groove, and it will find its center naturally. And once it's in there, you just start rolling. And as you roll and press down, it'll eventually puncture through the plastic. It did right there. I just felt it. It grabbed, and you can see it is dead center in that groove. So now we just continue to press in. And roll, and continue just pressing into that groove. Lift it out a little bit. Roll and cut, and it will just naturally follow that seam line at the joint. We're almost through. There we go. Perfectly cut, perfectly straight. Now, if you do wish to smooth things up a little bit, because that does leave a little bit of a burr, this is 320, and just sort of just smooth that burr off a little bit. Just like so. Perfect. Okay, so that part's done. The other things I like to do are, I will be sheeting these balsa fins with polystyrene plastic sheets. Now, you can seal these and then paint them, primer them. There's a multitude of ways of preparing your fins. I prefer, personally, sheeting them with 0.010 inch, it's very thin, polystyrene sheets. It requires no prep work on the fins. You don't need to sand them, you don't need to seal them or anything. I use 3M high strength 77 spray adhesive, and I simply attach these to the plastic sheet. It dries almost instantly. You can cut them out, flip it over to the other side, and then you're done with the fins. We will have to come back then later though and sand the leading edges, which this plastic sheeting sands just fine, so you don't have to worry about that issue. The other thing we're going to be doing is we're going to fill in the spiral grooves of the tubing before we start construction. And the way I like to do it is to take primer paint, spray a coat of primer on, preferably gray, that way I can see what's left behind. But as soon as I spray it on, then I take some lacquer thinner on a paper towel and just immediately wipe it off, clear the tube completely off. And what that will do is, you'll notice it'll leave the gray primer in the grooves. And you do that 2 or 3 coats, and your tube will be completely filled in and ready to go. So I'm going to be doing these things off camera, then we'll come back and start the construction of the rocket. Okay, real quick, I want to show you that the fins are done. I've got them sheeted, and the instructions call for rounding the leading edge only, not the tip, which typically you do see, but in this case they want it left flat. So we went ahead and rounded the leading edges of all 3 fins. Also, you'll notice when I sheeted the plastic, I cut the plastic off of the part that will go into the slot, because you want wood to cardboard purchase. You don't want the plastic interfering. Plus it thickens it up and it won't fit quite as well. So those are the fins. The next thing we need to do is make a mark on the body tube between any 2 fin slots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of paper and I'm just going to first measure the distance between 2 slots. Okay, so there's my length, and I want to measure this and divide it by 2. In cases like this, I find metric a lot easier to do, so we'll measure it in millimeters. Okay, it looks like it comes out at right about 46, so at 23, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, make a mark. So that's our midway point. Take our body tube, once again, fit it between the 2 slots. Okay, and I'm going to transfer that notch onto the body tube. Right there. All right, so there's our midway point, and I'm going to take my Estes tube marking guide and lay it in there. Now we want to, this is obviously for the launch lug, so we want to mark this at least 6 inches up because that's where the launch lug is going to mount. So there's the alignment. There we go. Okay, verify by looking down the tube like you're sighting a rifle. Make sure it's parallel to the tube, which it is. So we are all set there. Okay. Okay, now we're going to build the engine mount tube, and first thing we need to do is cut out the centering rings. So just take a sharp X-Acto knife and cut through the cardboard tabs. There's one. there's 2. Okay, you'll notice one has a notch cut out of it. That's for relief for the engine hook. And the other one is solid. This is going to be the rear one. This is going to be the forward one. Okay. Now we want to take our tube and we're going to make some marks on it. Get your ruler. We want to make a mark at the 1/2 inch. Just pick any end to start from. Make a mark at the 1/2 inch spot. A second line at the 1 inch spot. And then one at 2 1/4 inches up. Okay. Okay, the one at the 2 1/4 inch, we want to cut a little slot, about 1/8 of an inch wide. This is going to be for our, and I'm going to actually, instead of cutting it on the mark, I'm going to cut it to the side. That way the hook doesn't completely cover up the other marks we made. You'll see what I mean when you get to it. But so I'm going to cut my slot. Okay, I'm going to take my hook and it'll just sort of pop into place. Now see, because we marked it to the side, you're still able to see those other 2 notch marks. That's the goal of cutting it to the side of the slot or notch that I made. Okay, next thing we want to do is we want to take our black retainer ring and some wood glue. And now we're going to keep this minimal as far as glue goes. It doesn't take a lot of glue to hold the hook in place. And the reason we want to be minimal on the glue is because the fins are going to have to fit. In fact, there's a cutout on the fin. You see, notice that little cutout right there. That is to cover up that ring. And if you've got a lot of glue, you know, oozing out of that ring, it's going to interfere with that slot fitting nicely. So again, minimal glue. It's not going to take much anyway. And additionally, the fins will help hold the ring in place. So we want to glue up to that notch right there, the middle notch. And I'm just going to put just a few dabs of glue. Really not much at all. Okay, I'm going to get the engine hook straight. I'm going to rotate up to that notch and done. Immediately wipe off any excess that comes out. Okay, there we go. Always have paper towels handy to wipe the glue off your fingers. Okay, now we want to take our engine block and it's going to glue up to the side of the tube. That's a pretty loose. I'm actually surprised how loose that is. But it's going to mount up to the hook. So it's not going to be completely flush with the bottom. It's going to go up to that hook and it's going to give support to the hook. Okay, so we're going to run a bead of glue. Okay, we're going to kind of twist. I'm going to use my knife handle to kind of push it in up to the hook. And we'll come in and put a fillet around this later to ensure that the engine block is secure, because it is a little looser fitting than I prefer it to be. So, but there it is. Okay, we're going to let that sit and dry for a moment. We'll come right back and work on the centering rings. Okay, now we're going to glue the centering rings on. And although we made marks for the centering rings, additionally, I'm going to actually use the fin, A-fin, as a guide, because I want to ensure that the centering ring gives me room to put that ring in the slot. Right like that. So that does put us in line with the notch we made. However, you'll notice the cardboard rings are oftentimes warped because the cardboard stock they're cut out of has a warp shape to it. So that's just something we're going to have to put up with, actually. But what we can do is get the glue in there, get the ring in place, and then just rotate the ring around with the fin inside and make sure we get the get the fin notch up to the ring, giving us space for that slot, if that makes sense. So I'm going to back the ring out. I'm going to push the glue outward because I don't want any glue in the inside, which might interfere with the fin gluing. So, okay, we're going to run a ring of glue. And you don't want to put any glue on the hook because we want that free to fill in that notch. So I'm going to leave the glue out a little bit. A little bit of a plug there in my glue bottle. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to pull this up into place. Okay, I'm going to fit my fin in and press the ring up against the back of the fin. Just rotate the fin around, making sure that it fits all the way. Okay. I'm going to actually pull, let me get a Q-tip. Got a little blob of glue next to that hook. I'm going to pull it away from the hook on both sides. There we go. And I'm just going to use my finger to draw a fillet. A little more glue. Okay. Before we let it be, let's just make sure one more time that the fin does fit. Okay, it does. And we want to make sure there's no glue interfering with that hook. We're good. Now the other ring, pretty easy. It just goes flush with the end of the tube. Although I'm going to, instead of just making it completely flush, I'm going to leave a little bit of a lip. That way I can form a fillet. Okay? So there. I'm going to pull it up, twisting as I go. Okay. Wipe my fillet down. Now, because this is not going to mate with the fins, we can put a fillet in the front as well. So I'll go ahead and do that. Okay, nice. Make sure we're more or less parallel with the other ring. Again, it's hard when the rings are warped, but that's just the nature of the beast, but it's not an issue at all. Okay, before I set it down, I'm going to check one more time that that slot will fit around that ring. Looks like it does. So we're in good shape. All right, going to leave that to dry. Okay, next step is gluing the engine mount, which has now been fully dried and cured. And we've already got our fillets in where we want them. It's time to glue this into the body tube. And as we glue it in, we will keep in mind that we're going to align the engine hook with the launch lug line that we already drew on the tube. One thing to note, you always want to do a dry fit. Let me rotate it. The engine tube and the body tube will be flush when glued in. Now, the issue I've noticed is there may be some inconsistent distances between the centering ring in the slot there. Some of the distances might be off a little bit, and in the case of this one, if you were to take a fin and put it up against that rear centering ring, it doesn't fit up front. But in reality, let me try to get this out. It's because because the centering ring is curved. That's a warp that's built into the cardboard stock. It's nobody's fault, it's just nature of the beast. But if we were to glue the rear centering ring into position before we glue the fins in, we're going to have trouble getting the fins in. I've determined, and you may or may not agree, that the fins being glued in will be sufficient strength for that centering ring, because we're going to glue the ring to the fin. I'm also going to put a fillet on the back side. So I'm comfortable with gluing the motor mount in without applying glue for the centering ring from the onset, because that will make it difficult to glue the fin into that slot. We want that ring to be flexible so it can, move back while we fit the fins into position. I hope that makes sense. So with that being said, I'm going to pull this out. We're going to take our wood glue, and I'm going to use a Q-tip for application. Seems like I use Q-tips on just about everything in the build, but I'm going to apply a fairly liberal amount, and I'm going to put the glue just ahead of these slots. So you figure about that distance in from the end, and I'm going to rotate the glue around. I think a couple applications would be sufficient. Okay, let's take a look inside. Yeah, good ring of glue there. Okay, I'm going to take the engine mount. I'm going to find my line and make sure the launch lug is in alignment with it. And I'm just going to take, for example, just a ruler here. I'm going to press this in to make sure they're flush with the tube. The two tubes are flush. There, just like that. Slight rotation. Oops, I didn't mean to pull it out. You know what, while we got it out, let me just ensure that we got... Yeah, I'm glad I checked. The centering ring did not quite reach the glue. That tells me we need to reapply the glue closer to those slots. So I didn't feel any resistance, and if the centering ring does pass through the glue, you'll know it. You'll feel a little resistance. Yeah, this is going to be a lot better. Okay, and now I've got the glue just beyond the slots. Yeah, it wasn't quite reaching. Okay, try this again. Get it lined up. And we're going to press this through the glue. And into place. Okay, I'm going to let that sit for a little bit to dry and harden. And then I'm going to come back in and put a fillet. Stand by. I'm not going to do the fillet. We're going to glue the fins in, and then we'll do our fillet. So let's let that dry just to so it holds its position. Okay, the motor mount is secure, at least on the front side. Like I mentioned, we did not glue the rear centering ring in. In fact, you can see the gap. There's quite a bit of gap there, a little play between the ring and the body tube. But that will be taken care of once we glue the fins in. That's going to secure everything. And then we're going to come back and fillet this whole section as well after the fact. Also for the fins, I did some dry fitting. You may have to do the same thing, but you'll notice I did sand a little bit of a bevel into the tabs that go into the body tube, only to make this fit a little bit better. This way it slides in. It's still a little tight, which is good. That's what you want. But to at least get it started, I did kind of round over those corners to make getting in a little easier. It did dry fit, and it's self-centering. So we're just going to go ahead and go for it. So I'm going to take some wood glue. I don't want to overdo it because it's going to end up squeezing out a lot if we overdo it. But I'm going to put a little bit on this portion. And also, I failed to mention, you should sand the body tube in the front and the back of the slot so the glue has something to purchase to a little bit better. Sometimes the wax on the body tubes is a little thick and can prevent it from making a strong adhesion. Okay, I'm just going to spread a little bit. Now this here I'm putting on the side, this is the glue that's going to get squeegeed out. So have some Q-tips ready to go to wipe that off. Okay, so we're going to, you can see the ring in there actually, and that's what we're going to be going for with this notch here in the middle. Okay. Kind of work it into place, shimmy it around, and it's in position. Okay, gonna wipe off the excess. Actually gonna just take my finger, help wipe some of that off. Okay. There we go. It's actually kind of building its own little fillet in there is what it's doing. Okay. Grab another fin, do the same thing. Probably put a little less glue on it this time. At least on the side. You do want plenty of glue on the bottom because that's going to have to create some sort of fillet at the bottom of the fin tab where it mounts to the engine tube. Very little here on the side now. Okay, we'll go to the next one. You may have to slide it forward and backward to get it to find its position. Okay. Again, but we also want to make sure that these fins are exactly perpendicular to the center line of the tube. So far we're doing pretty good. Okay, we'll do this third and final fin. I know I got too much there on the front. Wipe some of that off. Okay, kind of wiggle it into position. I'm working at getting the bottom of the fin flush with the bottom of the tube as well. That's kind of my goal here as things fit into place. Okay, let me check from underneath. Bend that one over a little bit. Okay, that looks good. I'll go ahead and draw a fillet now along the base. Okay, and we'll take a Q-tip and just run that around, filling in the gap. Again, you want to be careful not to get glue in the little notch for the engine hook. Just sort of paint it on now, spread it. Okay, that'll dry clear and we'll be good to go. So now I just gotta leave everything alone, don't touch anything. Once everything's dry, we can come back and do our fillets on the fins themselves. Clean up some of that excess. Okay, looks good. Okay, we've given the fins overnight to dry. They are now solid and hard. There is a little bit of a gap in some of the fronts. I think this one and that one. This one I think is pretty well sealed. But not to worry, because once we get the fillets in place, they're going to fill in any gaps. But these three hardened really nice and strong. I'm pleased. I'm pretty impressed with its sturdy design. So now it's time for the fillets. Now this is where a lot of strength is going to come from. And I've discovered this new product called Titebond Quick and Thick. I don't know if it's how new it is, but it's new to me. But it's actually a pretty darn good fillet maker. It is put on just like you would any Titebond product, except it's a little thicker and doesn't run. So I can apply this and it's not going to flow either way. So I'm going to show you how I do that. I'm going to do one at a time because it dries rather quickly. So keep that in mind. You don't really have time to let it sit. So make one application, make a run with it right there, and then take your finger and then just not much pressure. Just pull your finger down and you've got yourself a fillet. Now this stuff dries clear as well, so the proof will be after you apply your primer and paint. That's when you'll see how the fillet came out. But okay, same process. We'll just draw our finger down. Minimal pressure on it. Okay, just one smooth stroke. Okay, we'll just keep going down the line. Now the harder you press into the fillet, the more glue is going to squeegee out on the sides. So that's why I'm applying minimal downward pressure. I'm really just pulling my finger across it. I'm resisting the urge to push down into the crevice. There we go. Smooth, steady pulls. Okay, just two more to go here. And final one. Beautiful. All right, we just laid down 6 nice fillets. And now the hardest part of the hobby, waiting for the glue to dry. So we're not going to touch it for a while. We're just going to let it harden. And once it goes clear, we'll know we're done. And you know what? One additional thing I think we can do, I just thought of this. Let's go ahead and keep that paper from blowing away. I'm going to take a Q-tip and I'm just going to put a dab of glue at the leading edge of each fin. And I'm just going to smooth that out with my Q-tip. There. That just sort of cleans up the, see how much it's going to be a lot smoother than that little bit of a gap we have here. This is where artistic style comes into play. You just kind of dress it up, make it pretty. And that's the nice thing about this. You could not do this with Titebond 2 glue. It's too runny, but this is thick enough where it'll kind of stay put and you can manipulate it like this. Okay, gonna let that dry, and then we'll come back and do our launch lug. Okay, the fillets are still drying, as evidenced of you're able to see the white. Once they turn clear, you know they're done. But we can go ahead and glue the launch lug on. It's far enough above the fins to cause an issue. So the instructions call for measuring 6 inches up from the base of the tube, up the launch lug line at the 6-inch mark, and that will be the bottom of where the launch lug is placed. So now that we've got it marked, I already pre-sanded this a little bit to roughen up the surface. I'm going to take some wood glue, and we're going to put just a very thin line down the lug. Okay. And we can just apply it directly and let it sit and dry. So I'm going to line that up on the line, and then once you have it down, go ahead and sight it from behind. Make sure it's parallel to the tube and directly on that line we drew. Like sighting a rifle. I think that looks good. Okay, so we're going to leave that to dry, and we can come back and do the fillets for this once the glue sets underneath the lug. Actually, because this is Titebond 2, whoops, it could possibly run, so I'm going to set it on my cradle just to hold it still while it dries. Okay, we'll come back to it. Okay, here's an update on things. The rocket is painted. You can see the white body tube with the green fin. It is about time to put the decal on, but before we put the decal on, I want to install the shock cord. So to do that, we got to build it up first. So take your 1, 2, and 3 squared trifold. Take some wood glue, and I'm just going to smear the glue over all the numbers. Okay. Take your shock cord, and I'm going to lay it at a little bit of an angle. That way when we fold the shock cord, it won't be folding over itself as much, making it thicker. So we're going to run it up to 2, extend it out onto 3, like so. And we're going to fold 1 over 2. Okay. Put a little bit more on the top of the cord here. Okay, and we're going to fold 2 over 3. Okay, squeeze out as much as you can, if any. Wipe up any residual. Okay, now we're going to put a little bit of a curl into this. And now we need to glue this down the tube at least an inch, inch and a half. But the idea is to get it below the shoulder of the nose cone. So at least an inch and a half, if not further. So I'm going to go ahead and spread some more glue on this side of the shock cord. Spread that around. Okay. Definitely want to clean up now because we're going to be handling the rocket and we don't want to transfer glue onto the rocket body tube. Okay, so we're going to take the mount and we're going to lay it down there. We're going to push it down as far as our fingers will reach and then press it up. Get it straight. Yeah, press it up into the tube. Okay. Okay, you can see it's flat. Oh, that lifted up. I'm going to put a little bit of glue on that corner, and but we're going to leave that to sit and dry. I'm going to again add some glue to that corner, and we'll come back, tie this to our nose cone, and we'll proceed on with our decals. Okay, while the shock cord mount is drawing inside the tube, we can go ahead and install, I should say apply our decal. It's going to go between the green and the white fin, and it's going to go directly in the middle of the tube, halfway between here and here, and obviously right between the two fins. Now, one thing I like to do with these decals that you apply like this is to trim off maybe 1/2 inch off one end, and then curl it up so it's folding upward a little bit, ever so slightly. Now we can lay it down where we want it, and when we get to the position and straightness that we want, then we can push this tip down and everything will be in alignment. So I'm gonna kind of eyeball it from above. Get it right where we want it. And we're going to lay that tip down right there. Okay, now before we go any further, I'm going to verify. I'm going to look down it. Make sure it is straight. It looks good. It's between the fins. Okay, so now I'm going to pinch the tip down. I'm going to fold the decal over, and I'm going to press with my thumb under here. I'm going to push the decal out this way, relieving the backing paper. And there you have it. Okay, now we're starting from the center. We're just going to kind of work it out to the edges, pushing out any air bubbles or wrinkles, which there really shouldn't be any, which there are not, and seal it down. Just like that. There you go. Okay, sorry about that. I had a little audio mix up, but I do want to show you the completed nose cone as well. It had a it came yellow plastic like the transition here, but I did paint this yellow just to give a little more gloss to it and a smooth texture. For the payload bay, you notice that the green stripe you see here is actually my masking tape, and I went with frog tape because it's actually green, and it gives the same illusion of the color that you see on the face card of the rocket. So that's kind of a nice effect. I did puncture out the little eyelet piece, which is this little guy right here. Just very carefully take an X-Acto knife, cut around it. Use any other, I used a screwdriver to help pop it out, and then you can tie your shock cord end to it. I did a double knot, and I did apply just a dab of wood glue into the knot just to help keep it from ever wanting to come undone. So that basically wraps up the build. Let me assemble this all back together and show you the completed product. Okay, there is the green eggs. Now if you do fly this and you put an egg in here, be sure to put the egg in a plastic bag or a Ziploc bag, and I'll let you think about why that is the case. So there you have it, the completed green eggs. Beautiful rocket. It was a fun build, beautiful build, and yeah, I hope you get one and enjoy it and have fun with it. And thanks for watching, everybody. God bless, and we will see you in the next video.